Hello. Today I'm going to do something a little different. My friend Andy is here, and he's going to help me talk about the Dune Universe. Primarily the two new movies, Part 1 and Part 2, but also a bit about the books and also about Dune Messiah. And there will be heavy spoilers, very heavy spoilers. I'm assuming that you've probably already seen Part 1 and Part 2 if you're watching this video. But for the Dune Messiah section, I will put a timestamp if you want to bail before we start talking about what we think that might be. But if you like what you see here, you can hit the like button, or subscribe would be even better, or hit the bell for notifications. And let's talk a second about our relationship. This is my friend Andy, and we live in Daejeon, South Korea. If you've watched my channel, you know that I live in Korea, but we met, how long ago?
10 years.
At least 10 years. We met a long time ago, and I guess we've been friends ever since. I don't know. I'm making him do this, so I guess we are friends. But anyway, he owns a restaurant bar in Daejeon, and I would say we're both quite large Dune fans. Over the years, we've discussed it many times, and when the first movie came out, we were like gung-ho to go see it, and same with this one. And we actually saw it at a theater here in Daejeon called Shinsegae. That's the mall, actually. But the brand is called Megabox. And normally I don't really like Megabox that much. What's your favorite of the big ones?
It's fine. They're all the same, but this one has...
Well, their snack bar wasn't very good. I'll say that for sure.
No, it was not.
Yeah, that's one thing about Korea is the snack bars here are not what you might expect. Like,
only has Stella beer.
yeah, there's like, well, they do serve beer, which is interesting, but like if you're looking for candy or normal things you'd think are at a movie theater, you're not going to find that in Korea. It's like squid and like caramel popcorn,
strange hot dogs,
things like that. So anyway, we went to Shinsegae, the Megabox, and Shinsegae has this really nice new theater with a Dolby Atmos system in it, and we saw Dune 1 there. But I mean, what did you think about at least that part of the experience, the sound and everything?
The sound is fantastic.
Yeah, it was good. It was very good.
You could feel the sound through you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we saw it there. I mean, if we had seen both of them in a worse theater, I think I would have been a bit upset, probably. But we're going to get into that experience a little bit, and we're also going to discuss the book Dune, as well as the book Dune Messiah, and we might touch a little bit on Children of Dune. I don't think we'll get into any of the ones later. I mean, they might come up, but that's what we're going to focus on. Okay, so let's start with the first book, Dune. When did you read it?
I must have read it in my early teens. I don't really remember, but I know I reread it in university with Dune Messiah.
Oh, you read them back to back?
Yes.
Okay. I actually saw the David Lynch movie first, I believe, but I was quite young, so I don't really recall much except for the strange imagery of David Lynch. But a lot of that, I think, went over my head. And then I think, if I recall correctly, I probably read it in my early 20s, maybe? I don't know. I'm old, so it's hard to remember when I did things, but probably around there. What were your initial thoughts?
As a teenager, I don't think I really understood all the themes, but I really loved the universe and the story and the way it was written as well. His writing was completely different for me back then.
Yeah, I think so. I think when I read it, because of where I was, you were obviously younger when you read it than I was. Where I was, I definitely identified with him, but I also identified with kind of like the collapse and things that happens in the book. Because when you're in your 20s, that stuff starts to happen more than when you're a teenager. But yeah, I think my initial thoughts. Well, when I finished it, I thought it was probably one of the greatest books I ever read. But I will say it was a little bit hard to get into at first because of all the vocabulary and the different terms.
Yes, the first 200 pages took me a while. And then after that, I read it very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where you almost have to learn it. And then once you learn it, that's the perfect time when the story just kind of cranks up and then you're like, this is amazing. And in fact, I think I almost put it down a few times. Like I was close. I was like, I don't know if I want to finish this. And then as soon as it got to that point, I was like, wow, this is awesome. So like over the years, like how has it kind of been in your life? Like have you reread it or thought about it more or before the movies came out?
Yeah, I've reread it a few times. Mm-hmm. And I think to this day it's probably still my favorite sci-fi book.
It might be the best one. It's definitely up there.
As a standalone, I think it's my favorite. The series itself might not be my favorite.
You think the series declines in quality as it goes on? Or because
No.
I've only read the first two, but...
I wouldn't say it declines in quality, just it's a bit strange, and there are series that are just consistently good. They don't have one book that stands out.
Can you think of any offhand that my viewers might be interested in? For fantasy, anyway?
Fantasy?
Yeah, what would be the best that you think?
My favorite fantasy is Malazan.
Okay, why that one?
Well, similar to Dune, the author doesn't explain overly, doesn't describe too much, and he doesn't treat you like an idiot.
Well, that's good, I guess.
I think both Frank Hebert and Stephen Erickson, they trust the reader to understand the themes that they're putting across, and they realize they don't have to spell out every little detail.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say about the first book, at least, especially the first one, not necessarily Dune Messiah, but the first one especially, is he doesn't really worry that the vocabulary is too crazy or too outlandish. And I mean, obviously they needed a vocabulary in the back, a glossary, but even that, it's a lot of trust in the audience, I think.
Yes.
Probably more than I would have, but yeah.
One good thing is I think it makes it very rereadable because
yes, definitely.
There's always things you didn't pick up on the first time, and new things to work out. Yeah,
and that might be why it's been so hard to adapt as well, I think, maybe. In fact, a long time ago, they used to say that it was one of those books that can't be adapted, which obviously isn't true because it has been, but whether those are good or not, we'll get into in a minute. But I think the problem with adapting something like this to a movie is there's just so much minutia and details that part of the reading experience is the soaking up of all that stuff, which makes the world feel very alive and real. So now we're going to talk about the Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2 by Denis Villeneuve. I'm curious of what you think of the kind of translation to film in this case. Do you think it actually works in comparison to the book?
Yes, I think it was... Both films are slightly more difficult for people who haven't read the books to fully understand. But I think he did a very good job of translating these books to movies. Maybe there aren't many things I think could have been done better.
Yeah.
We'll talk about some of those later.
Yeah. I am... Okay, I'll say this. I think the first one, to me, gripped me a little bit more because I think it's a little bit closer to the book, where I think in the second one it veers off a little bit, and we'll get to that more later. But the other thing I think that happened with the first movie is maybe this is why I think the second might not have done it as successfully, is in the first movie it really sets the stage well, I think, and it includes most of the main characters. But I think in the second, maybe my expectations might have been unrealistic based on what I had seen in the first one. So while yes, I think the second one was a great movie, I don't know if it's as close to the books as the first one. Were there things that were missing that you felt were a mistake to not put in, or?
Most of the things that were missing, I understand why they took it out, for time constraint or not having the actors age during
Right.
filming.
Right.
There was one change I didn't expect, which was taking out of the Mentat plot completely.
Yeah, me too. I was a little surprised.
I thought in the first movie when they killed Peter and showed Thitha Hawat doing his Mentat calculations, I thought they would include him becoming the Harkonnen Mentat.
Yeah, I mean that's a big plot point because he kind of does it against his will, and it becomes important later, especially when they have the kind of court duel. He's like in that scene, I feel like, but he wasn't in the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are probably scenes with him and the Baron and Feyd-Rautha where he's kind of interacting with them, but they just got rid of him. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I understand why they did it, but they included them in the first movie, so...
And pretty heavily, too. He's in it quite a bit. I mean, not obviously as much as the main characters, but, in the book, he's kind of a second-tier character, I'd say, maybe. Yeah, and that's a pretty big character to get cut, and like a third or fourth tier, The director said that he tried to make the second movie more of a Bene Gesserit movie, not a Mentat movie, whatever that means exactly. And I know they're supposed to do a series on, I think it's HBO or something, with the Bene Gesserit, which I'm excited for. And I'm sure they might have had to introduce some characters to kind of like set the tone for that. So then if they were, deciding should we keep this one or that one, the chubby Mentat guy goes out the window,
Okay, that makes sense.
It's like you have Lady Margot or you have the Mentat, like cinematically, it's just maybe a no-brainer. I don't know. What do you think about that potential TV series? Do you think it's a good idea?
Yeah, I do like the way the Bene Gesserit were portrayed in this movie.
That was spot on.
I think
so.
Even the changes they made, it made sense within the universe. There was nothing that was against the material.
Yeah, and I actually think all of the actresses were very good.
Yeah.
They all played them very well. In fact, kind of creepy, which they're supposed to be, obviously, but we're kind of talking a little bit about things that were missing. What do you think would have made the movie better? Or the movies better, let's say.
In the first movie, I was slightly annoyed that immediately they talk about how spice is important for galactic travel, for the Spacing Guild.
Yeah.
And it's kind of meant in this movie they couldn't have, the plot point of him blackmailing the Spacing Guild.
Yeah, that's like a whole thing that kind of got cut out, like the whole importance of the spice in some ways. I mean,
It says it at the beginning of both films, but
You don't feel it though.
it tells you, but
You know?
I don't feel it shows you quite enough.
Well, I think that's one thing that the David Lynch adaptation does better is when he's having the visions when he's on the spice, like it's pretty crazy and intense, and probably how it would be if you were going to be on spice, you know. But in this, they felt more just like dreams. They didn't really. It didn't feel like an altered state of consciousness or like you know some cosmic thing necessarily. And then that whole, like you said, subplot of the Space Guild and the navigators and stuff, that was just all pretty much removed. Which actually in the Lynch version, I like the navigator character quite a bit. It's pretty insane.
I guess they're going to bring the navigators more in for the next film.
I hope so. Because if it gets glossed over completely and is not there, then I think that's a huge part that's missing, you know. Now, this is something I guess to maybe point out is that this isn't really a spoiler, but Dune Messiah is not that long of a book. So if they decide to adapt that for part 3, they will have space maybe more than they had for these two.
That's true.
You know, so maybe they can fit in some of the things that they didn't include. Like we said earlier, there's so much vocabulary and like kind of terminology. And I know they're like trying to market the movie to a general audience, so they can't go crazy on that stuff. But I mean, maybe somebody in the comments can, if they know the answer to this, but I'm not even sure if they said melange. Did they? I can't recall them saying melange in the movie, I mean, they probably did, because I saw the first movie a few years ago, so I don't know if they said it in that movie or not, but
They must have. The spice melange.
you would think so, but I can't recall them saying it in the second movie. They just kept calling it the spice, right? And to me, that's kind of a big deal, because it's like a major term. And I mean, part of the whole, I wouldn't say the whole point of the first book is the terminology, but it makes you feel that this world is real by having all these special words for things. And they do it. What is it, the Quetzal Haderach or whatever it is?
Haderach.
Yeah. They do use some of the terms, but they don't. I feel like when they wrote the script, they wanted to make it as easy to digest as possible, so they left some of that stuff out, I feel like. Whereas in the Lynch one, I think that stuff's there. Unfortunately, the story isn't as coherent or whatever, but like the opening monologue with the princess and her like stating all the stuff about the spice and the Space Guild and everything, I think that's done well. So what exceeded your expectations? Was there anything that just blew you away?
Well, obviously, the sound, the cinematography, the look is incredible. This movie was, for watching it in a cinema, I would say it's even better than part 1.
Yes, I agree with you.
I'm not sure if I watch it on my TV, I'm going to like it as much as part 1.
Well, I mean, you know, most of his other movies, Denis Villeneuve's other movies are amazing. I mean, we went and saw Blade Runner 2049 together as well, and that was awesome. But I mean, I think that's something that he does well, is the spectacle. But they're deep too. They're not just like popcorn movies, you know. Can you think of anything that like just really blew you away though? Of all the little details, like something in particular?
Lady Jessica, Rebecca Ferguson. I wasn't convinced by her performance in part 1. I thought it was good. In part 2, they make some changes from the book, but I think they worked really well. And now I can't wait to see her in the next 1 or hopefully 2 movies. I think she's now perfect for this role.
Yeah, no, I thought she was excellent. I really liked the way they did her weirding way voice as well. That was pretty creepy. Especially the scene in the first one when they're on the chopper and she gets the guys to kill each other, basically. Like her voice was amazing.
Yeah.
In that. And actually, that's something I thought of that didn't really get explored much in this either. Was, if I recall, in the book, Paul starts training the Fremen how to do the weirding way, right?
Yes.
Like they don't really do that in the movie.
No.
Which is kind of odd when I think about it more. Well, what has exceeded my expectations? I actually think the acting was probably, I wouldn't say it's the best part of both the movies, but I think the cast was amazing. Like, across the board, I don't really think that there was a weak link. In fact, if you're going to say a weak link, and this seems ridiculous to say, but I would say it might have been Christopher Walken, and it's not because he didn't act well.
He had more Walken.
He had very little to do, and he's pretty old. He's the one that seemed to be kind of like not quite as there, maybe, as the rest, but he has such a great career, like, that doesn't matter. But as far as some of the standouts, I actually think Timothée Chalamet nailed it in the second movie. In the first movie, I was kind of like, but then once he had to be more forceful and kind of like the actual Messiah, basically, I think he upped his game as far as an actor. And Austin Butler was amazing.
Yes, yeah.
I thought he did a really good job.
One more change I really liked was they really hammered home what Paul is doing.
Yeah.
That has catastrophic consequences.
Yes.
The Lynch movie, he's just a hero.
Yeah, he's definitely more of a hero in the Lynch one.
But this one, it makes very clear
Yeah.
What he does.
That might not have been Lynch, though, because he didn't have final
That's
cut,
true,
so
yes.
it's hard to say. But
Yeah.
I agree with you. It definitely is more of a heroic portrayal of him. While he is heroic, and he doesn't necessarily want to be what he is, he eventually embraces it, and that's kind of the twist, especially in Messiah, I think. So this is a heavy spoiler for both the movie and the book, and that's the timeline and what they did in specifically the second movie. There's a lot of things where they changed the characters, and the first one I think is the biggest problem, and it could have very lasting repercussions, is the Alia character, his sister. Well, in the movie she was never born yet, so that is one thing. But in the book, by the end of it, I think she's supposed to be like 4, maybe.
I'm not sure. It's a couple years.
It's a couple years. He's in the desert a couple years. And that makes a difference for the next book, I think, a lot, depending on how they do that. Because how much in the future is the Messiah? Is it like 10 years, maybe?
Oh, I actually forgot.
I don't know, actually.
Maybe we should look that up.
Nah, someone will say in the comments. You don't have to be like...
12 years.
Oh, okay. I might actually leave that in the video. Or at least part of that in the video. Oh yeah, we have the book here, by the way, of Dune Messiah. And we also have Children of Dune. We don't have the original because we both read it too long ago, but so the Dune Messiah takes place 12 years after the events in Dune 1, but in the second movie, she is not born yet. So how old will she be if they make part 3 and it's based off of Dune Messiah? Like, that seems like a problem. Especially in the movie, they showed a future vision of her, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, but she's like late 20s. So that's an issue.
They're gonna have to hand wave that.
I don't know what they're either gonna have to. I mean, there is the possibility they recast Paul into an older man if they don't want to wait to make him an older man. I don't think they'll do that, but
Makeup.
yeah, but
It won't be the same.
Timothée Chalamet looks pretty young
Yeah.
for even his age,
I was
think.
going to say, I can't see him playing the pool in Dune Messiah.
He's going to have a lot of authority.
Mind you, I didn't see him playing the pool in part 2 quite as well, so hopefully...
True, that's a good point. But, I mean, that's part of the issue is, like, the timeline, depending on when they make this movie, like, we don't really know, like, is it going to be in 10 years, and then he's 10 years older? But then you have to think, you have to think that Anya Taylor-Joy will also be 10 years older. Unless they filmed her scenes now. But that would take an amazing amount of forethought to do that, but you never know. But another thing that they kind of miss with the timeline is Paul's son. He's not in it at all.
Oh, yeah, true.
And he's kind of a major plot point as well, I would say. Now, I don't know, like, did that bother you that there was like a kind of a squishing of time in the desert, or because it kind of bothered me a little bit. I feel like obviously there wasn't a lot of time in the movie, but I don't know. Do you miss her character?
I don't miss her character because I think whatever they did, it would have been compared too much to the David Lynch.
But
iconic.
she nailed that role though. Alicia Witt nailed that role.
But that's the thing.
She's amazing.
I don't think you can beat that. That's
you might be right.
Iconic and horrifying.
So iconic and amazing. She's great.
I do think it seems absurd that he managed to lead their tribes to total victory in such a short time.
Yeah.
He managed to learn their ways.
Yeah.
And get their support, and then lead them to victory all in 8 months.
Yeah,
it seems a bit outrageous.
When you really think about it, it is pretty fast.
However, when I'm watching it, I did not care.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, as a story, it still kind of worked. In fact, I think it's not that this one doesn't work. It's that I'm worried about the next one and how that's going to work if they make it. Because that's the thing with a lot of these kind of stories. Once you change one thing, it's like a snowball effect. Like if you consider in the Lord of the Rings, when they kill Saruman in the tower, it basically eliminates the whole real end of the book, you know? Which I can kind of see, because the real end of the book is kind of an afterthought, a little. I mean, I couldn't see it cinematically, you know?
Okay, yeah.
But...
I wouldn't call it an afterthought, but yes.
Well, yeah, I don't know what I would call it, but it definitely feels like a separate part from the... I mean, there's like 10 endings. Even in the movie, there's 10 endings. In the book, there's like even more, maybe. So before we talk about what might happen in part 3, let's discuss the other two versions a little bit. First, I think we should just touch on Jodorowski's Dune. Alejandro Jodorowski. They have a documentary about his attempt to make it. I've seen it. You have not seen it, correct?
I've seen a lot of clips.
Okay. It's interesting. It would definitely be... Like, people think the David Lynch version is strange. Like, if that movie came out, like, people would be like, what is this thing? Mm. Because even the design of the ships... I remember one of them even having, like, a racing flag pattern on it.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, like, weird stuff. Now, do you think if he got to make his movie that it would have been really trippy and amazing, or do you think it would have been like a train wreck?
It might have been trippy and amazing. It would have been a terrible Dune film.
Yeah, maybe.
It would have been an even worse Dune film than David Lynch's movie, which, again, I do like. But...
Yeah, I like his too. That's the situation where it's like the finest line possible, and if it tipped one way, you'd be like, this is the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah.
And if it tipped the other way, it'd be like, this is the biggest train wreck ever made, you know?
Yes.
Like, there, no safety net, you know?
Either way, I would say that this one would have been maybe even worse of a Dune movie than Lynch's. And when I watch the David Lynch movie, I have to separate Dune in my brain. Like, I have to watch it as a Lynch movie rather than a Dune movie.
Sure. I can see that. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I love Lynch's movies.
Yeah.
And actually, pretty soon I'm going to do a top 10 David Lynch movies. I've decided. But Dune will not be number one. I'm very certain of that. But I feel like Dune is a sci-fi movie, like, combined with a David Lynch movie. Which, it has the David Lynch elements, but then it also has sort of typical sci-fi stuff. And those things don't really work together. David Lynch, I think, works best when he's David Lynch and just going off into his uncanny valley or wherever he goes. But one thing I do appreciate about his version, though, are the details, like I mentioned earlier. I think those he does a good job with. But as a story, it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
And some of it's pretty cheesy. Like Sting.
The classic metal underwear.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of get it, but I kind of don't at the same time. I do think the mentats are quite good in that. And I do think I like the still suits. I think those look pretty cool. And I definitely like the visions. All the visions I think are pretty intense. What if someone else were to do it? Like, what if Kubrick had tried to do it? Or Steven Spielberg or George Lucas or someone? Do you think anybody could have pulled it off or no?
I think Kubrick also would have done his own thing.
Yeah, I think so too.
And again, it might have been a good movie, like The Shining.
Right.
But it's not. I don't think Kubrick would have cared about the source material.
No.
He would have cared about his own vision.
Yeah, I think you're right. Do you think anybody could have done it better than Denis Villeneuve?
No one springs to mind.
What if Christopher Nolan did it? What do you think would happen with that?
Well,
like if he got a trilogy out of it or something, do you think he could have pulled it off?
Visually, yes. I don't know how familiar he is with the source material.
Right. Well, I mean, Villeneuve was a huge fan to
Yes.
begin with, and you kind of tell.
Yeah.
There's a lot of passion in it, I think.
So I think we got very lucky with him.
What about like Spielberg or like Lucas or like even going crazy, like some crazy, underground director or something? Do you think anybody else could have made an interesting version?
Current Spielberg Lucas would have been too much CGI.
Yeah, probably.
Wouldn't have liked the look of it.
What about in the past? What if it was like, what if like Spielberg got a hold of it in like 1978 or something? Do you think he could have did it or?
No, it would have been compressed into one movie.
Yeah,
It would have been a mess.
Yeah, probably. I agree with that. We're going to get a bit into spoilers for Dune Messiah and what could potentially be the third movie in this series if they do it. So there's going to be heavy spoilers for that book, and I'll put a timestamp on the screen right now if you want to skip past this to get to the end of the video. But this is basically the last major section. So, do you have any predictions of what you think they're going to do with this? I mean, will it just be Messiah, or do you think they'll try to add more? Or
I think they can go as far as Children of Dune.
Messiah is not a long book. Do you think they would take any elements from Children of Dune, or they would just focus on Messiah?
I feel like the ending of Messiah is...
It's a good ending.
It's a good ending.
I'm not sure if it's bombastic enough for a cinema ending, though. Although it actually reminds me a little bit of the ending of Kill Bill Part 2. Kill Bill 1 is all the action, and then Kill Bill 2 is sort of like almost an epilogue in a way. And it doesn't, it's powerful, the ending, but it's not like this gigantic battle or anything like that. You know, and I feel like the ending of Dune Messiah is kind of similar. Doesn't have, like, in the original Dune book, there's this epic battle at the end, you know, and a duel. But, like, Dune Messiah is kind of low-key, I think.
Yeah, compared to it.
Yeah.
I still think it's reasonably bombastic.
Okay. So now, we didn't really mention Chani yet. I think partly because there's issues. We might have separate ideas of what these issues are, but Chani plays a large part in the book, in all the books,
yeah.
but or the first two books. And it seems her character was changed quite a bit in, I wouldn't say so much the first movie, because she wasn't in it much. She was just in the ending, basically, and the visions of her. But in the second movie, they definitely changed her point of view a little. What are your thoughts on that?
I understand they did it to, you know, bring more conflict and tension and drama.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't mind it too much. I did dislike the fact that the final shot is of her.
It should be of him. It's his story, let's be fair. But
the final shot is of her angrily mouth breathing, which also annoyed me. All the Fremen were mouth breathing instead of breathing through the tubes,
right.
Which retain moisture.
Yeah, that's a detail. You know, I get it.
But I thought the final shot should have been Stilgar leading all these Fremen to the Holy War.
Yeah, that would have been better. That would have been powerful, actually.
You know, so they have the final shot of Chani, I assume, to show like, oh look, his actions have jeopardized his relationship.
Yeah, they make it a bit of a cliffhanger, kind of, whereas in the book it's not really a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And I feel like she comes across as a kind of a different character than she does in the book. And I know, like, they probably trying to update things and, you know, all that jazz, but I also feel like it creates a lot of doubt, whereas in the book I don't think she ever doubted him.
No, she's upset.
Yeah, I mean, it's realistic that she was upset that he is going to marry someone else. But in the book, I think it's more clear that it's like a duty and stuff, and like that it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movie, it feels like it actually kind of means something, even to him. I mean, now you said it creates like a conflict, and I think that's kind of like why they made him a little bit detached at the end. Like, if you think about like the last few scenes, he's kind of just like, oh, let her go do what she wants to do. Whereas I don't think that's the Paul from the book either, in a way. How do you think that change is going to change part 3, Dune Messiah, though? Like,
well, she has to come back.
Yeah, she's in it.
I mean, she has to come back to Paul because they're raising children together.
Right.
I guess
she's a big part too of the book.
Yeah, she's a huge part. I guess they can still be, you know, at odds about certain things.
Mm-hmm. They're also going. I don't know if they'll do this off screen or what, but the fact that she kind of goes off, like, that has to be resolved somehow. So either they have to make a scene or two of that, and then does her attitude just suddenly change, or because it's gonna be probably 10 years later, 12 years later, like,
I mean, it has to be resolved quickly because he has children.
True. That's another point, yeah.
Unless they just forget the children and don't do Children of Dune at all.
Would that make Dune Messiah the same book, though? Because, like, I feel like the whole point of that book is to show kind of like that he fulfilled his fate, kind of, and that was part of his fate, wasn't it? I don't know.
It would change too much about the character of Paul.
I think so. And I'll say this: he's one of the greatest characters in the history of literature. I feel like one of them. So how do you navigate that if that those things are changed? I'm not sure. And then it goes back into the Alia stuff because she's a big part of that book as well. And then they're gonna have to figure out the age thing, like I said.
I'd just say she's speed
accelerated
aging.
Age.
Yeah.
Could be that. But then we get into the princess, who I thought Florence Pugh did a good job playing her. She's got a bigger role in Messiah, I think.
Yep.
What do you think they'll do with her? Like, will they stick to the book, or do you think they'll kind of twist that a little bit too?
I think in this case, for Messiah, sticking to the book would work well. For children, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't really know her as an actress, so I don't.
Yeah. I know her quite well. I've seen several of her movies. Unfortunately, I think that often she's a great actress in not that great of movies. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some that are awesome. Oppenheimer was awesome, and she's in that briefly.
Oh yeah.
She was his lover.
Oh right, yeah.
The communist or whatever she was. Yeah. And there are other movies that that she's been in that I thought were decent, but I'm not sure if she's gotten her due yet. 100%. I don't know. If you guys know of a movie that she's excellent in, you can do it in the comments. But if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I'm not a big Midsummer fan, so... But she was in that. She was excellent in it, but I didn't think the movie was that good. But anyway, so what else do you think we can look forward to in Messiah? In Villeneuve's version of Messiah?
Well, I'm wondering if they're going to show the... they're going to call it a holy war rather than a jihad, I think.
I think they should. Because otherwise there's not going to really be a major battle in the movie. Right?
Because the jihad isn't really shown. Like,
no, they don't.
Actually, Herbert doesn't really describe fight scenes.
Yeah. I kind of think it would be amazing to do it almost like Empire Strikes Back, like, where the battle's at the beginning, but have it be like a flashback of like the last however many years the jihad happened in, and just kind of show like a bunch of what the destruction that went across the universe, basically, the galaxy.
I mean, yes, the destruction has to be
substantial.
Yeah, it has
like
to be
billions,
made clear.
Yeah, billions of people died, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that has to be established somehow. And if you don't have like a lot of big battles, that's a good way to do it, to show what happened before, I guess. What about Duncan, Idaho? What are your thoughts on that?
Will they bring back Momoa?
Yeah.
Yeah, Duncan Idaho is like one of the most important characters in the next few books.
He's certainly important in Messiah, and if you don't know, I mean, we've already spoiled everything. I really like that idea of the Gola, the cyborg zombie. I don't know what else you'd call it, I guess. It's very interesting, and it kind of reminds me of the Mentat a little bit. You know, it's kind of like a hybrid person.
Yeah.
And I would be interested to see how he acts that role. I don't know if he's known for stretching his acting abilities too much, but I feel like he'd have to a little bit to pull that off. So that's
It
kind
would
of
be
exciting.
a very, very different role for him.
Yeah, I think so too. And I would kind of like to see the romance that, what is her name? Alia and him have, because that's kind of interesting as well, I think. And if they do a series or something, maybe they are in play in the series. I don't know if they can get them. But these days, a lot of actors do TV series, so I don't see why they wouldn't. What about the timeline difference? Do you think that's going to be a huge thing, or do you think they'll figure out a way to just...
I think they'll just hand-wave it.
You think so?
I think the biggest thing is showing that Shani came back almost immediately.
Yeah, so then is she going to do a big 180, or like how are they going to address that with her character, I wonder?
I think they can keep her as
antagonistic,
somewhat antagonistic, but standing by Paul, questioning similar to this movie where she's questioning his decisions.
Yeah,
I think that would be fine.
Okay. I don't know. Like I'm trying to imagine it, because I've actually read Messiah pretty recently, a year ago maybe. I don't remember when I read it. Maybe about a year ago. I do remember there being a lot of like kind of love triangle scenes, but not exactly a love triangle. Just more like he's kind of a different person with the two different women, because he kind of has to be.
Yeah. And
that's a little bit of a burden, I think. Yeah, I don't know what they'll do with it, but now
I hope they don't make it a love triangle.
Well, now the question is it going to work as a spectacle summer blockbuster movie? I'm not sure. It's more of a character drama or something.
It is. I think there's some scenes that they're going to hype up.
Yeah, maybe.
Like when he gets blinded.
Right.
I think they'll turn that into
very dramatic.
A dramatic battle.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And you can add a lot of suspense in Messiah as well.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the one great thing about that one is there's a lot of like political intrigue. And that's something we didn't really mention, is that there's the other group. I don't know how you say their name, but the other witches, the starts with a T or something? Something like that. I don't remember what it is. But that was interesting to see that there's another kind of cult working within the world. But they were more about like technology and stuff, right? Yeah. So do you think that he'll make a Dune 4, or do you think that... I'm pretty certain he's going to make a Dune 3.
Yes.
It seems that way. It might not be next year, it might be 10 years from now, but I think he's definitely trying to do it.
I'm not sure if he's going to make a Dune 4 or if he might just set things in motion
for someone else to
take that on.
Yeah, I could see
Either
that.
way, I'd be happy.
Well, unless they screw it up.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't, even though I've had some negative things to say about part 2, I still think it was a great movie. I'm not trying to say it wasn't a great movie.
Yes.
I just am a big fan of the book, so like I claim ownership of it. But I would like to see Dune 3 for sure. I'm not sure if I want to see Dune 4 or not, if there would be one. It's kind of like Cameron talking about the Avatar movies. Do I really want to see like 14 Avatar movies? I'm not sure. I mean, I didn't really like them at all to begin with, but like even, any franchise, the longer it goes, the more chance there is of it to crash and burn, I feel like.
That's true.
I would much rather this be a trilogy, 3 great movies, done. They can do some spin-offs, like the
Bene Gesserit.
Bene Gesserit thing, the Sisterhood, that's cool. I wouldn't mind seeing that. But in that case, they don't have to stick to his work necessarily, because his son did books and stuff too, right? Like, so there's all kinds of lore about them that they could get into. I think that's about it.
Okay.
You have any final thoughts about any of it, or?
Go watch Dune.
I agree. If you have anything you want to interject, Anything you disagreed with us on, or you were behind us on, you can comment. And if you know someone that would benefit from this, a Dune fan, you can share this video with them. And like and subscribe if you want to, and that's about it. I'll see you next time. Say goodbye, Andy.
Bye.
Bye.